Okay. So he debuts here in November of '85. We know he's going to be managed by classy Freddie Blassie. Out of the norm for Blassie, he's usually just managing quote unquote foreign heels. And Hercules also ends up being Blassie's final protege to go along with Iron Sheik and Nikolai Volkov, who he was also managing. I guess that's kind of a cool little trivia note and footnote in history that, hey man, it's kind of a cool deal to be the last guy that Blassie manages, right?
Well, I can explain the whole, international deal because Freddie Blassie got his contract from Skandor Akbar and Devastation Inc.
Of course.
And Herc had, he wore the headgear and everything, and Blassie thought he was a sheep. So
I get it. He was confused.
Akbar and that Devastation, they were tricky. They were a tricky group that would sometimes pull the wool over people's eyes.
I hate to hear that.
By God. And Freddie, I think, done got took.
I feel like a lot of our listeners only know Freddie as like the elder statesman, almost like ambassador for the WWF. Tell us about him as a manager.
I thought Freddie was a good manager. Back in the day of the early years of the WWF in New York, the managers only appeared on television. They didn't go to the live events, and they would go to the Garden, but they would only walk out with the guys and then go back to the dressing room because they had so much heat. And a lot of times the managers carried most of the heat, and Freddie was a classic on the microphone. The whole pencil neck geek thing, which goes back to Freddie's early days in the business. And, Freddie was so far ahead of his time in LA as a heel that he also became the ultimate babyface. A fan one time threw battery acid in Freddie's face. They hated him that much. But Freddie was also the first one to do a lot of crossover in the entertainment world with Regis Philbin, when Regis was just a local guy in California, in Hollywood. And Freddie was just so far ahead of the curve throughout his entire career, was a classic heel, became a classic babyface. Freddie used to file his teeth, and send pictures of him filing his teeth to a point when he would go to Japan. And Freddie was the first Gaijin, the first American wrestler to work in Japan as a heel. And Ricky Dozan brought him in, after the war. So that was a big deal. Freddie's going over there as an American heel after the Americans had bombed Hiroshima. And you think about that, and I think a lot of people don't understand the gravity of that and the magnitude of doing that for an American in general to be walking the streets of Japan, and how the Japanese would look at American people. And they just looked at him and said, oh my God, your country tried to destroy our country. War is a terrible thing, and the devastation. And it was just the way, that it was in many ways. And for Fred Blassie to go over there, bleach blonde hair, dark tan, and would cut these just horrible promos if you look at them through 2022 eyes. But he was the ultimate heel. And years later was the ultimate babyface in Japan. And, his wife, Miyoko, met her in Japan and brought her back to the States, and just incredible, classy lady, of course, married to classy Freddie Blassie. But Freddie just treated her like she was the queen, and she was, and still is. But just Fred Blassie, a unique guy, and having the pleasure of getting to work with Freddie in his later years. And I would go up and just sit with Freddie, sometimes for hours on end, and just listen. You kind of get Freddie off on a tangent and just get him to tell stories. And just a great education, and to be able to see the business and to see the world through those eyes of someone that lived it in such a unique capacity as Fred Blassie did, that you can't, in our day and age, people that are really our age, well, your age, more so than me even, don't know what it's like in many ways to have that kind of divide in the world and to be able to break down those barriers. And Fred Blassie was a guy that did that.
So Hercules is presented more like just another guy in the company in this era. He's going to win some squashes on TV. He's going to win opening and lower card matches on the house shows, but he doesn't really have a feud going on. But he would defeat the likes of SD Jones, Scott McGee, Jose Rivera, Lanny Poffo, George Wells, even his old former partner, Mr. Wrestling 2, over the first few months. And in most cases, he wins with his finisher, which is the dreaded overhead backbreaker submission. Is Hercules maybe the perfect person to challenge Hulk Hogan just physique wise in this era, do you think?
I think so. I think you could have put Clint from Hershey in the ring with Hulk Hogan and it probably would have drawn.
Well, I don't know if that's exactly true, Bruce, because in Hershey, Pennsylvania, I think that the biggest heel at the time was probably, the Macho Man Randy Savage, and they didn't wait to put Randy in the ring with Hulk Hogan until much later in time. So I'm not sure if I could have been able to do it at that time. Maybe after that, because I'm a pretty good heel.
But anyway, I think that Herc would have been a great opponent for Hogan.
Not as good as me.
Anyway, Clint from Hershey makes a return.